Welcome to the next edition of Expert Showcase. Today our special guest is Joe Vulgamore, and he's got a question for you. Are you stuck and can't move forward? Well, if you are, he's got 3 tips to get you going. Hey Joe, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm grateful to be here. How are you today?
Oh, epic. Wonderful. Glad to have you on. I mean, I'm looking so forward to asking people the question, are you stuck and can't move forward, and getting there. We'll get to that in the second piece of the show. For those of you who have watched Expert Showcase, this might be a little bit of a new format for you, so just play along, come along, and have an epic day with us. Here at the beginning, we're going to get into Joe's hero's journey, because it's really important that you get to know Joe a little bit better so you can know where he's been, what that low point he got to was, and you know, what he did to get himself out and get him where he is today. So Joe, before we dive deep into your hero's journey, give us a quick overview of your hero's journey.
Well, basically, I came up, after high school, went to the military. After the military, I got out. I started, working my own thing, doing my own jobs, basically entrepreneur kind of stuff. I ventured into various different careers. I picked up a lot of leadership training and interpersonal communication training and like neuralistic,
NLP
programming. Yeah, NLP.
Yep.
And so with those kinds of things, my career all boiled into one time I just decided that I was going to start helping people with the knowledge that I had and help them get unstuck, like I had to do over my journey.
Exactly. That's a great summary. So to kind of reiterate, just to make sure I understand, you started off, had a lot of success. I mean, you were in the military, things were going well. You hit a point in your life where you got stuck, and you had to develop the tools and techniques to get unstuck and move forward. Once you developed those tools and techniques, you realized that helping other people with those tools and techniques was not only going to make your life better, but was going to make their life better. And that's why now, today, you help people get unstuck and give them tools and techniques to move forward. Is that a pretty good summary?
That's a pretty good summary. I like that very much. Absolutely. And yeah, that's the thing, because I love to watch people succeed. And whenever I can help someone move forward and not have to remain in this spinning their wheels mode, and they can actually get out of it, they can actually move forward and create the success they want to have in their lives. That's why I do this. That's why I do what I do.
Let's go back to the beginning. Let's start off, because as for people who know a hero's journey, it normally starts off at the beginning where things are going real well. There's a turning point, some disaster, something happens in their life to make a change, and then things get better, and there's a new normal. So your previous normal, the beginning, you talked about, you went to high school, you got out, you got into the military. Give us a little bit more about that background. Tell us a little bit more about, who where you were and where you were there at the beginning.
Well, whenever I joined the military, that was a point in my life where I started to realize and recognize that I was capable of more things than I thought I was originally capable of doing. That's when I started to recognize my own ability to create my life the way that I wanted it to be if I focused myself in the right directions and did the right things and made the right choices that took me along the way. So I had great fun in the military. I had great success there. I got out and I entered civilian life, and I began to create different things, different projects for myself, and create different careers and business ventures that I wanted to pursue.
Interesting. So let me interrupt for a second. Let me ask you a question,
Sure.
because something you just said, I think doesn't go along with my view of the military, and I've got family members in the military. So you said you realized that you could make something more for yourself. It seems to me that a lot of people, when they think about military people, it's more of this command and control structure, that you're not thinking about how to create stuff that you're being told exactly what to, exactly what to do. So I'm really intrigued in that beginning part in the military, and in that part, how did you go in an environment that to me on the outside seems as a very command and control and ordering structure to saying, wait a minute, I can make things for myself, and I can control things, and I can make things different and better.
Well, one of the things, all right, we're understanding that the military is far different today than it was whenever I went in. I went in the late 80s, right? Dating myself here a little bit, but I went into the Army in 1987, and it was a different military then. It was a different way of, people had different ways of doing things. The military itself had different ways of doing things back then, but one of the things they did, and they do this to everyone, and sometimes people don't recognize it or they're not able to capitalize on it, but the military strips away all your outer layers of gunk. The same way that you go to a coach to get that done, the same way that you go to a psychotherapist to get that done, whatever the case may be, the military strips all that stuff away from you. And depending on what you're doing as a job in the military, it can be more extreme for some than it is for others. And they strip you down to your actual core, and then they build you from there. And as they're building you, you start to recognize that you can do things that you never done before. And if you allow that recognition, if you take that on with the proper perspective, then you recognize that you can. I mean, if you could survive that, if you can get through that, if you can create a desirable outcome from all of that, then you can do it anywhere you want in your life.
Excellent. And I love how you aligned it with coaching, about how that's what coaches do. If you get a really good coach, not necessarily do they strip you down, but they teach you how to strip away all the layers of gunk in your life, to open you up for the new possibilities. That's awesome. So then you got out of the military, and you had already started to say, you already started to make a different. You started to change, which is interesting.
Absolutely.
Before I leave getting out of the military, I think you have a typical story to a lot of people. I'm not saying you went into the military to change, but a lot of people go into the military because they know they have to get the gunk stripped away, and they have to figure out, and being in that really strict environment is a great way to do it. Kind of like being with a coach at this point, when you need to strip everything away. You need to work with somebody who's gotten unstuck before, to get everything stripped away. So let me ask you one fairly personal question. Did you go into the military knowing you had gunk that you needed to strip away, or was it being there that illustrated that fact?
No, it was just being there that illustrated the fact. I joined the military because I was 17 years old, needed some college money, and I wanted to jump out of airplanes. That's why I mean, at the time I was 17. You think about that. I just graduated high school. Hey, let's go on an adventure. Let's, I don't want to go to college right now. Let's go on an adventure. Let's go do something. I want to jump out of airplanes. So I did. And that was part of what started this whole thought process for me about being able to create your own circumstances in your life the way you wanted to. I wanted to do it, so I did it. And anybody can actually do that if they allow themselves the proper mindset to be able to allow themselves to do it. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why it's so critical to work, we'll talk more about working with coaches later, but that's why it's so critical to work with a coach who's been there. I mean, like Joe, who has been there and who sat there and went in for one reason and then realized that they could, make a change. So, since we only have an hour show and I could probably interview you for the rest of the day about your experiences, I think what I'm taking away from this whole thing, and just correct me with a no if I'm wrong, but you went in for one reason. Your eyes were open that there was different things you could do, and through that, you've also been able to, and this is future, we'll talk about it later, is develop tools and techniques based on your military experience that can help people recognize quicker, faster, and easier with less pain how to recognize that, how to do it in their own life. I mean, is that a fair, quick summary?
Yeah, that's very fair. That's a good summary.
Excellent. So thank you. So you got done with the military, you got out, you got civilian life, you started doing some stuff, and at some point, and I don't mean to diminish it, but at some point, it went from being, successful being in the military to getting out, being, at least mildly successful in civilian life, to having some challenges.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that really becomes where, where that whole turning point comes in. So,
Yeah.
when did you, before we get to the actual turning point, when kind of, can you pick a point where things might have been going good and then started to go down, like a point that people may recognize in their own self that they might be headed towards a downtime?
Well, no, actually, in this particular case with this particular story, there was no warning. There was nothing, and I've went over this, 1,000 times, a million times in my own head, and there was no warning leading up to it, because what had happened is I had a very great thing going. I had a great job. I was making good money. I had just bought a great house. Just everything was going great, and I was running my own magazine, and just life was good. And then at 36 years old, my ex-wife had a late onset of schizophrenia. And bam, out of nowhere, life just, from, one day life was great. The next day, different, and everything changed, and everything spiraled out of control after that day. And it was literally like day and night, just bam, that fast of a change. And because people, you can't see that kind of thing coming. So, there was no warning signs leading up to it, but it stuck me for a long time. I spent 5 years stuck in that hole, of nothing but negativity and despair and worry and fear and everything all around. Yeah.
Wow,
So,
five
and then,
years.
and then losing everything, losing my business, losing the excellent career I had, and losing the house, losing vehicles, getting down to nothing, living in not so nice places to live, and those kinds of things, just to be able to, to try to figure it all out, and how to, yeah, it was a mess. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds real challenging. And I think one of the things that's interesting about what you said is that there was no warning. And I think a lot of people feel that way. Whether
Right.
there was or wasn't. In your case, there wasn't. But whether there was or wasn't, a lot of people feel that way. There's people watching this video who might even feel that way, that they're stuck right now and that there was no warning. So one of the good things about working with a coach that understands that is that you can understand the feelings of how despair and how desperate it feels, and how why wasn't there any warning. I mean, that would be one
Right.
question I have. Did you spend a
And
lot of time during that time trying to figure out and dwelling on the fact of what you could have seen and that sort of thing? Did that happen a lot during that time?
oh, absolutely. I spent a lot of time looking back to see if there was something I could see. And I would say that the initial event came without warning. But over the course of the next 5 years, there were lots of warning signs that I could have seen, that maybe I did see and ignored. Maybe some of them I did follow and take. So there was lots of, there's a lot of dynamics that go on in something like that. And so yeah, there were definite warning signs all throughout the whole thing that sometimes make a person think shoulda, coulda, woulda, what if and but how, and those are the things that keep you held down in there. Those are the things that don't allow you to be free. And when you're living in that type of negativity, it's sometimes hard to see past, what your next action is going to be for just yourself, and what's your next thought going to be, not to mention everything else and all the other dynamics and how it's affecting everything, the feelings. And yeah,
So
you're stuck. It's quicksand. It's
yeah,
quicksand.
and you're so right. And one thing you said that I think is extremely interesting is, and I'll translate, it isn't worth it.
Right.
In other words, trying to figure out why it happened at some point it becomes not worth it. I mean, there are times
That's
when
right.
you need to figure out why things happen because you don't want them to happen in the future. But there comes a point, would you agree that there comes a point where you have to say, look, I've thought about this enough about why it happens. I've learned all I can with the way I am right now about why this happened. I've got to move on and make it better. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's yeah, it's accurate. Absolutely. Yeah, there comes a point where why doesn't even really matter because you're there, and you can either go down in the quicksand or you can pull yourself out of it, and those are your only two choices. You either will pull yourself out of it or you won't, and you already know life is going to suck if you don't pull yourself out of it. So that the only other option is the better option. So you have to do that.
So during that time, what was the I'll say what do you feel your deepest and darkest time and the most mentally challenging, the worst piece, like that really rock, I'll call it the rock bottom moment. I mean, what do when was that? What was that? What was that kind of, pretty much that moment there in time that, you kind of, you hit rock bottom, so to speak, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, well, it come a time whenever she proved to be dangerous for the rest of us to be in physical presence for me and my children, and that was when everything hit rock bottom. That was when, after 5 years of trying to care for her in that situation, that's when I realized that I was actually putting other people's lives in jeopardy, my own, my children's, and it had to stop. It had to stop. And
So what you're really saying is it got really bad, and it
yeah,
got to a point. It got to that point of no return. It got to where it was becoming dangerous to you and to everybody else, and you knew you had to make a change. Um,
absolutely.
so that means you can help people who have gotten to that point. But let me ask you a question before we go into the
Sure.
new beginning and the aftermath. If you had to do it all over again, and if you could stop before it got that bad, would you have stopped it before it got that bad and tried to do things differently to make it better sooner, knowing what you know now?
I would like to say that I would. Yeah. At the time, you're just running on autopilot then. During that time, and your thought patterns are just caught in this cycle of, I mean, and you can't see anything. You can't see past your own hand in front of your face, and so I would like to think if I had been able to maintain the awareness then. I mean, I had it before and I lost it then, and I've had to regain it since, and the if I could have maintained my awareness through all of that, rather than giving in to the negativity and everything, I'd like to think absolutely I would have done things different and done things sooner.
And therein lies the key. So if right now, if you're watching this video and you're on autopilot, you need to continue listening to what we've got to say during the rest of Joe's hero's journey and during the getting unstuck, because it'll help you to keep from having to go through what Joe did and get all the way down to that black moment. And that's really one of, from talking with Joe offline, that's one of his, that's one of his goals, is to help people to not have to get to that deep, dark, black moment. So now we've got the deep, dark, black moment. Let's talk about the aftermath, which is everything that happened between the time you got right down there till now, you're out helping people, change their lives. How'd you start coming out of it, out of that dark place?
Well, whenever we hit rock bottom, like you was talking about, whenever that rock bottom moment hit, right there, I had to make a choice. And that single choice set a course for all the events that are to follow. And so I started to pull out of it at that moment because I had to send her away. So I sent her away. Because there was no other options. There was no other outcome that would be even close to a positive outcome. And that's after having explored every option there is to explore. So that one choice set things in motion for me to be able to move forward with my life. I went back to work. I went back to work in the mental health industry where I was previously, and so I, for a long time, I just focused on supporting my children, learning to be a single parent, learning how to, which basically that whole 5-year period, I was essentially a single parent anyway. So as far as decision making and everything was concerned, so that was part of everything that built along the way. I had to learn to rebuild my life. I had to learn how to hardwire myself, how to change my thought processes, how to change everything about my life to create something new for myself and something successful for myself, so that I could get back to just being alive again, and just having the freedom to live my life and have control of everything that happens to me versus surrendering to circumstances.
Exactly. Well, you did what they describe, at least in my view, you did what they do on airplanes when they tell parents to put their oxygen mask on first before the kids. I mean, it's a natural inclination to want to save your children, just like you had a natural inclination to want to save your wife. People watching this video have a natural inclination to want to save their family, and they believe by doing it one way they're doing that. Well, if it's not working, you've got to look at a different way of doing things and say, okay, how do I really put on my oxygen mask? Joe, for you, it was going back to work, because if you hadn't gone back to work and put on your oxygen mask, then it would have been more of a struggle for you to be a single parent and make the right decisions for your kids. For some people, it might be getting a coach to put on their oxygen mask, right?
Right, absolutely, and that's what, as coaches, that's what we're here to do. Is we're here to hopefully turn people. Just nudge them in a direction that leads them away from that deep dark place, and then help pull them up, help them set a mindset, help them understand that they don't have to get to that point, and if they are at that point already, that you can get out.
Right. And I thought, and also something you said was very interesting. You went back to something you knew and were comfortable with in the mental health field, right?
Right.
So the interesting part is that for people on that, coming out, or for the reason that's important for somebody who wants to work with Joe as a coach, is the fact that it's something, how can I put this? So we all have stuff we knew in a previous life. It might not make us a lot of money. It might not be where we want to be. But Joe, you made the decision to say, look, it's not where I want to be right now, but I got to do something to start making things better. So for those of you watching who is starting to get bad, you might have to revert back to something you did, even if that's not your overall goal in your future vision. Right, Joe?
Absolutely, and that's the thing. Well, I going back into that field, and not only did I go back into that field, I had to start at much lower level than I had been working in that field before. And that was a sacrifice that I chose to make, that I made a conscious decision to do, because it was going to, first off, I just needed stability at that particular point in time. I didn't care what it was, just anything that could have been stable, and so I achieved that, but when the incident with my ex-wife very first happened, and as that everything there spiraled out of control, you kind of tend to not leave a great impression on your previous employers, if you know what I'm saying, because you're constantly having to leave work in the middle of meetings. You're not pulling your share anymore and those kinds of things, and so it devastates you, and so I mean, it can devastate you, career wise sometimes too, but you can change that. It doesn't have to stay that way, and that's part of what I get at here as I went back into the mental health field because it was comfort zone. And I worked my way back up a ways, and then I recognized that's when I got into coaching. That's whenever I decided that, look, I have all these skills and these talents and things that I can help people with, but I can't use any of them because I'm bound by regulatory agencies that say, no, you have to go with this single prescribed treatment or else nothing else will work, or we're not allowing anything else other than this, very strict restrictive guideline, but that you've got a technique or something that can help someone. That's whenever I had enough, and I just said, what, I'm going to take all of this leadership training, all of this interpersonal communication training, all of this motivation training, and all of everything that I have, and my study of human behavior, and I'm going to become someone who helps people get out of these types of situations, that helps people be able to move forward in life with success versus having to be stuck and just spinning your wheels, no matter what their definition of success may be.
I love it. I love the way you just summarized it and gave a great example of what truly happens in that aftermath of that deep dark place, of that turning point, which is you got back to what you knew, so you got back to stability. You eventually got to the point to say, what do I have that I can give to people? What is my overall, what does my portfolio say, and how can I put that in a way together so that not only am I helping people, but I'm giving something to people, but I'm also making myself happy, and I'm providing for my family and everything. So that is
absolutely,
that is awesome, Joe. So in this first part, you're welcome. In this first part of today's Expert Showcase, we've been talking about Joe's hero's journey. You've heard about how Joe started off as a military guy, basically wanted to be an airborne ranger. I'm going to translate and go, he wanted to be an airborne ranger. And believe me, I've got some family in the military, and I've heard about airborne rangers. I've heard, so I got to be very careful because I'm probably going to offend, everybody who's an airborne ranger, but I'll give you this. I've heard about, So anyway, so for the people who know my people and the people in my family who are military, please don't hurt them. But anyway, that's besides it. When you see them at the reunion, don't give them a noogie because of what I just said. So anyway, in all seriousness, you heard how Joe was a military guy, went in for one reason, learned some things, got out, was successful, had a major traumatic life event, got to a deep, dark place, and was really stuck. And in the aftermath has been able to take not only his military training, but mental health training and everything else, put it together in a way that's helping him, helping you, and helping everybody. So you got to stick around, because next we're going to jump into getting unstuck, and really the core of Joe's message for today, and asking the question, are you stuck and can't move forward? And we're going to talk about 3 tips to get you going. Before we do that, we want you to stick around, but before we do that, we're going to take a very, very quick break, and then after the break, stick with us. We'll be back and you'll hear more about how to get unstuck. So once again, stay there and we'll be right back. Hey, are you a coach or consultant? Do you realize that having a powerful branded video presence is going to help you succeed in this noisy, noisy world? If you do, then I want you to head over to VideoContent.Agency, take a look around, see what we've got to offer. We do branded vlogs, branded webinars, and branded web TV shows for coaches just like you. So once again, if you're a coach and looking for some great branded video and a great online video presence, head over to VideoContent.Agency and check out what we got to offer. Get in touch with us. Let's have a quick consultation, see if we're a good fit to work together and produce a web TV show for you, produce a branded webinar for you, or maybe produce branded video blogs or vlogs for you. And we're back. Having a good day, having an epic day with Joe. You having a good time so far, Joe?
I'm having a great time. This is fun. Thank you for having me on. This is just, I'm enjoying it. Absolutely.
Good. Your check's in the mail. I paid all my guests to say that. So, but no, in all seriousness, we're going to now get into the Experts Focus segment of our show. If you didn't watch the beginning of the show, if you're seeing this as kind of a segment, you definitely want to go back and watch Joe's hero's journey and understand how a former military guy had a very bad turning point in his life, and then in the aftermath took all his skills and knowledge, is now out helping people who experience the same or similar things to what he did when he was stuck and helping them move forward and how he can help you move forward. So in this piece of the episode, Joe, we're going to talk about, are you getting stuck and can't move forward? Before we get into the bullet points, which I'll give the folks, before we get deep into each of those points, give us a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about in this segment.
Well, we're talking about being stuck. When we're stuck in a place that we're not happy, where we're not feeling successful, where maybe we're feeling powerless or worthless or just general, we don't like it, kind of thing, then a lot of that generally is because of our thoughts. Our thoughts create things. Our thoughts have us making decisions based off of beliefs that are sometimes maybe not where they should be, and we can get stuck. We can get stuck in this quicksand because we repeat the same thought patterns over and over. And if you repeat the same thought patterns, you're going to create the same realities. And the way to do that is to obviously change your thoughts. It all boils down to basically using your thoughts and then making choices to get yourself unstuck from whatever situation you're in, and making choices that'll move you towards your goals.
Awesome. And specifically today we're going to talk about rediscovering core values, breaking the cycle of habitual thinking, and making conscious choices that move you towards your goal. So let's dive into the first one, rediscover your core values. What do you mean by this? And let's talk about this for a little bit.
Well, core values are guidelines. It's a set of beliefs that we have within ourselves that are going to lead us in certain directions. And for some people, core values may be happiness or love. For some people, it's success and fame, fortune, those kinds of things. For some people, it's just loyalty and honesty and those kinds of things. So various different core values, and we all have all of these core values. The list goes on and on. I mean, my core value assessment that I give to clients is 5 pages long. So there's a lot of core values there, and the way that you have to evaluate your core values based on certain life stages that you're in, certain experiences that you've had, because when we're born and as we're being raised as children, we're having beliefs instilled on us from outside forces, from parents, grandparents, school teachers, and we start to take on those beliefs because at the time we're young and we lack the experience to recognize that those are someone else's truths. They're not necessarily our truths, but because we believe them, we make them that way. And a lot of people hold on to these core values for so long in their life. As their life changes, they're holding on to sets of values that no longer serve them. And
Right.
when you can realign with your core values, because like I said, core values change. A person may have thought at one particular point in their life that having money is only for evil people who take advantage of the world and attract their money through, exactly, twirling their mustaches and everything, then and if they're still holding on to that 40 years later and they're stuck and they're not where they want to be, well, that's because that core value is out of date for you. And whenever you're stuck, it's because most of the time you're trying to move forward with a thought process and a belief process that is anchored way in the past, in a place that no longer suits you. And that's where limited beliefs come in. Those are where our limited thinking comes in, the thought processes that hold us back from what it is that we're trying to achieve.
Right, and that's why it's so key to rediscover your core values, and that's why you put it that way, of rediscovering, because really what you're doing is you're uncovering what your current core values are and making sure
Right.
they're still in alignment with where you want to go versus where you were, right?
Absolutely, and it can light a new path to getting there. If your end goal still remains the same, you realign your core values, and suddenly you have avenues to reaching that goal that you didn't see before, that you didn't know were there before, because maybe you're okay now with taking this route because this certain core value, you're better aligned with it now than you had been before. So yeah, I mean, and then not only that, but then the decisions and choices that you make that do send you forward. that
Well,
do help you get to where you want to go. You feel good about them. You feel happy about them because that's you. That's you're able to make this decision and do these things without a cloud hanging over your head.
yeah,
And
exactly. And when we let me interrupt for a second. When we talk about core values, realistically, aren't all of our decisions made, or shouldn't all of our decisions be made by bouncing them against our core values and say that if this decision is in alignment with our core values, it's easy to say yes, and if this decision if what I'm being asked to do is not in alignment with my core values, I should say no. I mean, isn't that part of the reason why core values are so critically important for people to understand what they are at this point in their life?
absolutely, absolutely. Without knowing where your core values are, I mean, all your decisions are going to be made based off of a value that you have somewhere. You know, whether that value is actually serving you or not depends on your alignment with it. Like I said, sometimes if you're subscribing to a 20-year-old core value because you refuse to change as you enter different life stages or as different experiences happen to you, if you refuse to change that, then you're still thinking from that mode, and you're never going to move forward from that. Then you wind up being caught in this repeat process that's a perpetuating cycle that never stops, and that keeps you stuck. When you can break out of that and you can think and you can see things in a different perspective based off of realigning your core values, like I said before, there opens up all kinds of avenues. There opens up all kinds of opportunities that will serve you to help you get where you want to go.
That's great. Now I have a question for you. I know your intake form is it's 5 pages, and as far as the core values go. So, do you separate with folks the difference between a value and a core value? Meaning, a value is something that you can use to make judgments, but if you have to go against it, it's not going to violate your being on the inside. And then a
Right.
smaller subset of core values that you will not violate no matter what, and they are the ultimate guideline. Do you separate the two when you work with clients?
Yes, actually I do. Because what they do with that core value assessment is they go through and there's a process of narrowing it down, and eventually you wind up by the end of this assessment you wind up narrowing it down to basically three core values, three that if you can stay within those three, if all the decisions you make are within those three core values, then you're generally going to be pretty happy with your decision. I mean, sometimes you're going to wind up with a more favorable outcome. You may not like it necessarily, but sometimes making a decision, the hardest and toughest decisions are between good and better and bad and worse. It's easy to make a decision between good and bad. Of course you're going to make good, right? But good and better or bad and worse, when those are your decisions, sometimes they're not so easy to make. And that's where your core values will come in and help you at least pick the alternative that you can live with as a human being the most, that you can move forward with the most, that's going to bring you the best of all the potential outcomes.
Yeah, and that is so great. It's something that a lot of people people watching this video might be right now saying, well, I know my values. And I would challenge people that one of the advantages of working with Joe is to figure out your core values, because sometimes we believe our values, and we make decisions based on what we believe our values are, but we don't, like Joe said, we don't know what they are. Aren't really attuned with what they are or should be today. And we might be making a value-based judgment based on a non-core value, which is almost as
Right.
dangerous as not knowing. Because if you have a non-core value that is guiding your judgment, a non-core value is something that it's not going to hurt you inside if you don't follow, but a core value will. So you really have to worry about getting to those core values. One of the challenges, Joe, and I think you and I have talked about this before, is part of the reason that people have such a difficult time in rediscovering their core values is because they're in this habitual thinking mode. In other words, they're in the habit of thinking one way. So let's talk a little bit
Right.
about habitual thinking, how that can affect people, and maybe what they can do to start breaking the cycle and start to change that.
Okay, well, one of the simplest ways to describe habitual thinking is that you wake up in the morning time and you go through your morning routine. You wake up, you brush your teeth, make a cup of coffee, you shower, you get some breakfast, you get dressed, and you take off on your way to work. You do the same thing every day. It's the same process every day. The process. It goes on, and when you drive into work, you're taking the same route to work every day. You're taking the same turn lanes. You're making the same left and right turns to get there because you're following this exact same process. And what that is that's habitual thinking. By the time you get to work, you probably don't even remember having driven the route because it's such an ingrained thing that goes on. That's habitual thinking.
And let me interrupt for one quick second, because I don't think you're going to say this because we've talked before about this, but one of the worst things that happens is when it's a Saturday and you're following that same habit, forgetting it's a Saturday, and you get to work, or you leave the house and you go the same direction that you always go when you go to work, even though you wanted to go in the opposite direction because you weren't thinking. I mean, how many times that happened?
Right.
I know it's happened to me a lot. How many times it happened to you, Joe?
Absolutely.
Where you're just
Absolutely.
in the habit of leaving the house at that time, and your brain, you're not really thinking about where you got to go. So all of a sudden, you get at the end of the driveway, you go the normal way, and all of a sudden, you're 3 turns in, and you're going, dang it, I wanted to go the other way. So, and that's one of the dangers of habitual thinking, is not necessarily continuing to do the same things, but continuing to do the same things when they don't apply anymore, right?
That's right. That's right. And, one of the things about that makes habitual thinking so bad for us is when we tend to think these habitual negative thoughts over and over again. A lot of people, let's say someone has self-esteem issues, for example. Well, their self-esteem is so low because they are in this process of thinking so lowly about themselves that they can't see anything positive anymore. It's the same way. It's just like making that right-hand turn you go to work every day, and they're not even thinking about it. They wake up, an opportunity maybe presents itself, and they turn it down, they turn it away because they don't think they're worthy of it, because somewhere they've had this belief ingrained in them that they can't attain something, they're not good enough to attain something, or that maybe they just don't have the ability to do it. They're not powerful enough to create it skill-wise or something along those lines. And when that really holds people up, those are, and they allow themselves to keep thinking this over and over, and then pretty soon they believe it. And then whenever you start to believe it, then you're not moving forward any. You're not processing information within yourself in a way that benefits you. All of a sudden you have become this thought. You have become what you keep thinking about. You have become your own worst enemy in this particular situation with being stuck at where you're at because of a habitual thought process.
Right. And the thing of it is our brains are here to keep us safe. I mean, I'm sure you talk about this. I'll dig into it just quick. I'm sure you talk about this in your book that we're going to tell people about later on, or in other things you coach with clients. Fact of the matter is our brains are here to keep us safe, and our biology and our evolution has made it that way, and safety means consistency. So even people who are depressed, when you ask them if they would rather be undepressed, they will give you a verbal answer of yes, but if you do a brain scan, it's actually the scan of somebody who's lying, even though they're not, and even though the world says that that's really kind of messed up, so to speak. It's like, why wouldn't you want to be happy? It's like, well, it's not that they don't. And it's not that people who have bad habits don't want to break their bad habits. It's their brain is preventing them because their brain wants to be safe. Their brain wants to stay in that status quo because change is, change is scary. I mean, just like, you don't want to go to a different part on the when we were evolving, we didn't want to go to a different part on the savannah or wherever we were living because we didn't know what was there and it could be dangerous, even if there was no food where you were at, right?
Exactly. And yeah, that's the thing, and that's the comfort zone. What you're referring to is what I like to talk about with the comfort zone. And yeah, you're right. People like to stay inside their comfort zone, even when their comfort zone is not particularly comfortable. And they stay in there because they know the tolerances. There's tolerances. They know what they can take. They know how much. They know what to expect. Okay, yeah, okay, I'm going to be dealing with pain within my comfort zone here, but I know I can tolerate this much pain because I've been doing it over and over. And, well, it's just much more preferable than to all the pain that I could experience if I stepped outside of my comfort zone. And then that's where the habitual thought process is. That was the habit thought. All the pain that I could experience. But you could also experience all of this great joy. You could also experience all of this great freedom. You could also experience a million other things and wonders that you never thought were even possible, because your habitual thought process has kept you in this thing of, I'm going to feel pain.
Yeah, exactly. So real quick, is there one, in like 30 seconds or less, is there one tip you could give people to, even before they start working with you, to start to break that cycle of habitual thinking?
Yeah, ask yourself one question. Is this action, or is this thought going to move me closer to where I want to be, or is it going to keep me stuck in the same place where I'm at? And then make your choice based off of that. If you want to move forward, make a choice that's going to move you forward. If you want to stay stuck where you're at, then just keep doing what you've been doing.
Excellent. So for those people who are stuck in this cycle of habitual thinking, the next time, I think what you're saying, Joe, is the next time they have a thought and they have to make a decision, the simplest thing to start doing is to say, is this decision going to move me? Forget about what I think I should do. Is making this decision in this way going to move me forward or not towards where I want to be, right?
Right, absolutely. It's choice. It all boils down to choice. You get to choose how that next action is going to take you.
And
you get to choose it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, it almost seems like, when people are in the cycle of habitual thinking, it almost seems like they can make the decision, and then once they've made it, basically it's like saying, okay, if I follow through with this decision I make, will that take me forward or back? So in other words, it's kind of like, if you're not realizing your habitual thinking, you can at least say, okay, I've made this decision. Now that I've made it, will it move me closer or further away from my goal? If it moves me closer, I do it. If I can't see it moving me closer to my goal, or I can't rationalize it moving me closer to my goal, then that sounds like a clue that I might be in the cycle of habitual thinking, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let you know that it's time to think something different.
Exactly. And that takes us into the third point today, which is make a conscious choice that moves you towards your goal. So we already started talking about it. Let's dig deeper into it. Tell us why making a conscious choice that moves you towards your goal is so important.
Well, when you're making, like we were just talking about, when you're in the habit of making choices off of autopilot, which is what I like to call it when we're driving to work and whenever we're getting up and doing the same morning routine every single day, those are autopilot choices. Whether you realize it or not, you're making a choice. You're making a choice to stay in that particular pattern. And you're making a choice because you didn't choose to do something different. So even not making a choice is making a choice, in effect. So how you make a conscious choice to get out of it is when the next time you're faced with a circumstance, rather than acting or reacting or interacting the same way that you had always done before, because knowing that those same thought patterns are just going to recreate the same outcomes that they've done before, then you have a choice. And you can consciously make a choice and say, hey, no, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to back off of this, and I'm going to do something different than I did before. And by just making that one simple choice to do something different, and then taking the action to do it, you just changed the entire outcome. You just broke a habitual thought cycle.
Well, it's like,
and now all of a sudden it's game on in a whole new world and a whole new way of doing things. Even if it's only different by that much, it's still different. And now all of a sudden there are different variables at play. Now you have a greater chance to succeed because you have more variables to play with, because you're looking at it from a different aspect, because you have made a conscious choice that you're not going to be in the cycle that you were in before. You're not going to live that way anymore. You're going to take charge of your life, and you're going to make these choices that are going to get you to places you want to be.
Exactly. Well, it goes back to the old days. Think before you act and think before you speak. I mean, it's funny that you don't hear a lot of people talk about that anymore. About think before you say something or think before you act. And I know that some of the people I've coached have had this terrible thing where they've become so habitual in just speaking their mind and believing that everybody will see their good heart, that they get
Right.
themselves in trouble sometimes. And
I've been there.
so you got to work and say, okay, even if it's not every time, think about what you're going to say real quick, and then and physically think about what you're going to say, and then say it. Not like they talk about at networking meetings where people are thinking about what they're going to say next. That's a whole other topic. But if you find yourself just blurting things out, it's the same thing in what Joe was talking about. Think about it real quick and think of how it sounds. And that helps to start the chain of making things different, right?
Absolutely. Just doing the one little thing different, and just asking yourself that one little question: is this going to move me closer to my goal? That can cause you to take the one step that breaks you out of the cycle. And I suppose some cycles are good for some people. Absolutely. I mean, you have people who get up and they have a healthy cycle of eating properly and getting morning exercise and getting the proper amount of rest at night and hydrating themselves properly before they start their day. And those are good cycles to be in. And those are if those are the types of cycles that you want to be in, you can create those for yourself. You can create new habitual thought patterns for yourself in ways that are going to benefit you versus the cycles that are not benefiting you. And so you open a whole new world of creation just by choosing your thoughts. So that's the one choice that you have to make is, am I gonna act on this thought or not?
Well, and you brought up something about healthy cycles and about conscious goals, and I just want to run something by you. So on the surface, a cycle of getting enough sleep at night and getting up, hydrating, working out, having a good breakfast, and doing things that make you physically healthy. On the surface, that sounds like a good conscious habitual cycle to be in, right? Sounds like it.
Sounds like it.
Now, that was going to be my question. Even when you have good things that look on the surface and what everybody else would say were good habitual cycles to be in, would you say that people should reevaluate them to see if there are any unintended negative consequences and that they might have to change that cycle?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, I mean, you take a look at someone who is vegan, for example. All right. Me personally, I still eat meat. Okay. I know, sue me. Everybody just get me now. Somebody call PETA on the phone. Yeah, I still eat meat. Right. The thing is that, but a vegan makes a choice that they're going to give up meat, that they're going to give up dairy products, and that they're going to stick strictly to this very strict diet. They also make a choice when they make that their diet just, and every meal that they ate just went up in price. They're just, it's expensive to eat like a vegan. It's expensive to eat what they do and to prepare the meals the different ways that they prepare them and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, those are choices. Those are choices that they make based off of it. So if all of a sudden they're hurting for money and they're going to have to make different choices, maybe that's one of the things that they look at. If I make a different choice, if I choose to no longer particularly live this lifestyle, even though it's great and healthy for me, maybe just a vegetarian lifestyle would save me just a little bit more money. I'm compromising a little bit here, but it's win-win on both sides. So,
Well, and that becomes the real big key is the fact of, and that was kind of the point I was trying to get to, and I'm glad that we're on the same page on that, is say, is it as a whole good or bad? We think it's good, maybe we think it's healthy, but if it's hurting our finances and it's causing more stress in our finances, then is it really the best thing? And
Right.
that's when you've made a conscious choice to reevaluate your habits, and then you go back and rediscover your core values. Because as a great, vegan is a great example. Some people go vegan because they're really opposed to any type of eating any type of animal because they don't believe it's right, and that's great. If it gets to a point where they don't have enough money to feed them and their children, then they have to go back and they should at least go back and make a choice and say, okay, am I going to take the life of an animal over the life of my family? And they might, and that might be the way they go, and they might stick, and that might be their core value, that all
Right.
life is sacred. The beautiful part about that is if they find out that that is still their core value, then they know they've got to go make more money someplace else. So it gives them the path to go forward with. I mean, is that kind of a fair way to wrap this?
Exactly.
To
Like you
kind of
said,
wrap?
exactly. They're in the nutshell, because if that was still their core value, then it opens up a path for them to go forward. That's what the core values are doing. They open us up a path. It helps us change our negative thoughts. It helps us change to see how it all works in a cycle like that. Our core values say to go this way. The decision to keep us on top of our core values is the right thing for us to do. So we're going to stay with that. That opens up a new path. Okay, so now we have to go make more money, just like you said. So then there's faced with various different paths and opportunities that come with the next decision of making it. That when you make it to go get more money, then there's another whole process begins again. A whole new alignment of your core values, a whole new thought process that you either got to construct or deconstruct, and then choices that you have to make to go there.
Right. And that's why it's so important to work with a coach like Joe. I mean, today we've been talking all about being stuck and moving forward. In part one, you heard about Joe's hero's journey from somebody in the military to civilian life to a very deep, dark place. And then the aftermath is him putting all his experience together to help folks just like you getting unstuck, because Joe was stuck at one point. And in this piece of the episode, we talked about rediscovering your core values, breaking the cycle of habitual thinking, and making a conscious choice that moves you towards your goal. And you just heard Joe very eloquently wrap it all up to show you how first you make the choice, then you can at least question and possibly break your habitual thinking. You define your core values, and then the loop starts all over again. It doesn't mean you have to change your core values. It just means that you're reconfirming what you've got in place today is working for you, for your family, to make you the biggest success you can be. So the great news is that between now, the time you're watching this video, and the time you start working with Joe as a coach, you can do something awesome and epic, which is read Joe's book. Now, you got to go to, I'm going to punch up Joe's website. There we go. Joe, we got Joe's website, JoeVulgamore.com. And if you go to his website, you can actually get his book called Hardwired, A Personal Guide to Success. They can go right to your website and purchase it right from there. Correct, Joe?
Absolutely, absolutely. That if they purchase it from my website, it'll actually take them to Amazon to be purchasing it from Amazon. It's available in paperback and Kindle.
Awesome. So for all you multitaskers out there who are now shopping on Amazon while listening to Joe and I talk, you want to search for Hardwired, A Personal Guide to Success, or Joe Vulgamore, either one, and get his book. So while you're multitasking, definitely get his book.
Absolutely.
And once again, we're just about to wrap up. So Joe, before we wrap up the episode for today, any final thoughts you want to leave our viewers with?
Well, yeah, the viewers, just think about it. Any situation that you have that you're stuck with, it can be anything, whatever. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling unhappy, and you're having a hard time coming to a decision about what to do, about how to get out of it, you can't see the path. The first thing is just check your core values. Check your core values and align yourself with those. And then any decision you make going forward will at least be a decision you can live with in good conscience, a decision you can be happy that you made, and a decision that'll move you closer to the outcome that you want to achieve. And that goes for personal life, professional life. It goes for the white-collar world and the blue-collar world. It goes for the executive world, anywhere you're at in life.
Awesome. Great advice. Great advice, Joe. Loved having you on the show. Thanks for another epic episode. I say another, But yes, I kind of screwed up the first episode, but that's okay. Thanks for the epic episode today, Joe. Thanks for everything you do for everybody. Folks, get Joe's book, go to Joe's website, connect with Joe, do what you can. He's there to help you get unstuck. And until next time, and until the next episode of Expert Showcase, make it a great day.